What's up everyone? Welcome back to my 4-Star School YouTube channel. In today's lesson, we are going to learn how to send the request to your backend using some third-party library in the Flutter. As you see in this Mindmap, I have listed some of the package we're going to cover in this tutorial. So the first one will be the building.io package, which is called HttpClient, and the next one will be the HTTP package. I also list out the deal package in this Mindmap, but we're going to cover it in the coming lesson. If you are new to my channel, feel free to reach out to my channel page, and I have created Flutter build app from scratch using the GetX, and also I create the Flutter UI from scratch tutorial and Flutter GetX tutorial, Flutter tutorial for beginners, and Dart programming language tutorial. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open the notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. First, let's open our Visual Studio Code and the Android emulator. As you see, I have wrote some code before today's lesson, and I will walk through those examples and give you the explanation. So first, we're going to cover how you can using HTTP client to send a request over the internet. So let's open this HTTP client.example.dart. As you see, I declare the save list widget, which is called HTTP client example, and I wrote the function which is called request. I'm going to sending the request when I press this button. So back to the Mindmap. As you see, I have listed out all the steps we're going to follow to send the request. So the first step, we're going to create the instance of this HTTP client. As you see, the first line, we're going to create the instance of the HTTP client, which is came from this .io package. So the second step, we're going to use HTTP client.getURL, this method. So we're using this HTTP client.getURL, right? And we construct our URL. In this case, I'm going to use a public API. You can send a request, which is this JSON placeholder. They provide the raw resources, so we can send a get request, post a request, put request, patch request, and delete request to the poster route. So we can click this guide, and it shows us how can we send a request. So we just need to construct our URL. So back to our Visual Studio Code, and we construct our URL. I'm going to send a request to this endpoint. As you see, this is the output we're going to see. First, you will return a single post contain the ID, title, body, and use ID. The HTTP client also provides us some extra method we can use. For example, we can use this post URL to send a post request and put the URL, delete URL. Since we are using the get URL, so we don't need to send extra data. So if you're using this post URL, you're going to create another variable which is called payload, and you're going to put your data in your payload, and you're using this request.add. You're going to encode your payload and using this UTF-8 format, and then you can send a request to your backend. The third step is you're using this headers attribute, and you can call this add method to construct your custom header. So for example, we construct our headers by adding the token, and we can append the secret token string to our header. And then next step is we're going to close our request. So we're going to await until we have the response. And the next step is we using this response.transform, and we pass this UTF.decoder and convert our response and concat to a string. So we will get a string of response. And then we need to close our HTTP client, which is our last step. Let's open our emulator, and we're going to click this button and watch the console carefully. So by press this button, we're going to send our request to the JSON placeholder. So when I press send request by HTTP client, as you see, we immediately get the response, which is a JSON string, contains the user ID, the ID, title, and the body. So back to the web, you can see we are getting exactly the same format of this output. That is the first way to send the HTTP request over the internet using this HTTP client. But in the reality, we are not using this to match. We were probably using this HTTP package and a deal package. Next, we're going to talk about sending the request using this HTTP client. You can always reach out to its official documentation. So in the pub tab, you just search the HTTP and you will see these details for this package. This package allows you to make individual HTTP requests, but also it allows you to open a persistent connection by using a client. So let's go back to the Visual Studio Code. Let's clear our console. And here I create this post.dart class. As you see, we're going to use JSON placeholder. This endpoint, you will return this post back to us. We have this user ID, title, ID, and body. We create this from JSON, this method, and we have another method which is to JSON, and last is this static method, this from JSON. So consider we will have an endpoint to return a list of posts. So we could call this method to return a list of posts. And back to this main.dart, I'm going to comment this out. So uncomment this, I think, okay, and save the code. As you see from this screen, we have get post, list, create post, update post, and delete post. So we're going to cover all of those endpoints. Compared to the HTTP client, HTTP package provides a more convenient way to send a request. As you see, we only need these two steps. The first step is you construct this URL using this URL.parse method, and then you can send a request by using get or put, post, or delete. That's it. That's how you send the individual HTTP request using HTTP package. So back to the Visual Studio Code, and here I create this post client, and I declare the base URL, which is this JSON placeholder, and then I create another variable which is a post endpoint. So I manually concat this post route. Next is this fetch post method. We will return the future of the post. By provide this post ID, we will get back our post. So first we construct our URL by using this endpoint concat with our parameter, which is the post ID, and then we will await this HTTP using this get method. We import this http.dar as a HTTP, so we could just using this http.get, and then we have this response status code equal to 100. Indicate we have successful get the data back. If you don't know the status code, here I find a website which provide you a better reference. So first we're going to scroll down, refer to this red. If we sending a get request, if the return is 200, it means our request successful. So we could check our status code is equal to 100. If it equals to 100, means we successful get the response data, and we could using this JSON decode convert this JSON string to our post object. So you will call our from JSON. This method will convert our map data to the post object. Open our iOS emulator and back to this HTTP example.dar. So here is the UI for this screen. So first I create this stateful widget, and I set this requesting this variable to false. We are not display any data on the screen. So as long as I press the button, this requesting will change to true, and the data will show on the screen, as you see. So first we're going to initialize our post client, right? Then we can use this post client to send a request, and we create this post variable and make it future post. So then we can combine with the future builder. So by scroll down, you see, so first we have this get post button. When I press the button, we're going to assign this post variable with this method. It will return the future of post, right? And then we change this requesting to true, and it will display on the screen. And scroll up for this future builder. So first we put the future as this post. So you will check if we have the data back. If we don't have data, or we encounter some error, you will show the error message. And as long as you click the button, so first it will show a circular progress indicator, right? And then when we have our data, it will show these text widget contains our title and the body. So let's clear our console and hit this get post. As you see, when I press the button, you will trigger this post client.fetch post. As you see, the fetch post will call this one fetch post, and we will see the response the body in our console, and also we will see the title and body on the screen. Okay, so let's click this button. Here you see, and as long as I click the button, we get the response body, which is the user ID, ID, title, and body, and we will get these posts back, right? And we show on the screen. So first you see we have a circular progress indicator, which indicate we are loading the data. As long as we get the response body, it will display our title and the body using this text widget. Okay, let's clear our console and reset our screen. So the next method inside our post client will be fetch posts, which will return a list of posts. As you see here, when the status code equals 200, I'm going to return this post.list from JSON. So we're going to convert this JSON string to a list of posts. Right, so you will return a future of list of posts. So back to this HTTP example.dar. Instead of return this single post, we're going to return a list of posts. So I'm going to comment out the code here and uncomment here. So we will return a list of posts, right? And the future we just pass this future of list of posts. And since it will return hundreds of posts, so I only display the first two posts. Okay, so let's save the code. I'm going to press this get post list. So when I press this one, you see we got two posts, right? Back to this post client. As you see, I will call this list from JSON. So the list from JSON will take a list, and we're using this map function, and we will map individual element using this post from JSON. So you will return a list of posts in this case. Okay, let's clear the screen. So the next method in this post client will be a create post. As you see, when I press this button, I'm going to construct a new post. So I'm using this http.post method. So first argument will be our URL, and the next one we're going to specify the content type, which is the application JSON, and the char set will be UTF-8. So as you see from this JSON placeholder, you will show how to create resources. So first you're going to construct your JSON string, and then you will set the header to this content type application JSON and change the char set to UTF-8. So you follow exactly the same back to this Visual Studio Code, and we're going to using this JSON encode to construct our JSON string. And you see here status code, we're going to check if it equal 201. And back to our reference, so we're going to use this create. So the 201 means we created the resources. 200 here means everything is okay, but we're just using this 201. So back to the Visual Studio Code, and here we're going to check the status code if it equals 201, and then we're going to return back these post object, right? So by default, when you call these route using this post method, you will return the response body will contain the ID, title, body, and user ID. Actually, you will return this JSON string back to you, indicate which post you are create. So I open this emulator and back to this example. So here I'm going to comment out this future of list of post, and uncomment this future post and save the code. So here I'm going to press this create post. So watch the console careful. So when I press this one, and I will get exactly the same as you mentioned on the website. So we create a new post with this ID will equal 101, and also we will show this title and body on the screen. So it means we successfully send a request to the endpoint. So the next method inside this post client will be the update. Like these create, we're using the http.put. Basically, you almost the same as we use in the post. So you will update the user ID, the title, and the body. We're going to specify which post ID we're going to update. So here we're going to update the first post. When I click this update post, we will update the first post by changing its title to update title, the body to update body. Okay, so the last one is the delete post. So since we are not return anything bad, as you see here, I just return this future void, and if it's successful delete, I just print out this delete success. So here I'm going to clear console and reset the screen. Also, I'm going to comment out this a future builder. Okay, so and let's press this delete post. As I press, you will see the console will output we delete the resources successful, and I delete the post. So the ID would be 1. So I'm going to delete the post and indicate we delete successful. Okay, back to the Mindmap. As you see, the HTTP package can also sending the multiple requests to the send server. So the first step, you just need to create this client using http.client. You create the client and you can make multiple requests using the same client, and then you need to close using this client.close. So I think here should be client.get. You can using a client.put, client.delete, and make sure you're going to close the client after you finish your request. And also, if you're going to retry, I mean resending your request after it failed, so you could wrap this HTTP client with this retry client. By wrapping this, default it will provide 3 times of retrying to resending the request to your backend. Okay, I think that's all for today's lesson. I hope you learned the basic knowledge of how to sending the HTTP request using either HTTP client or the HTTP package. In the next tutorial, I'm going to cover the base usage for this deal package. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel, sum up my content, and open a notification so you won't miss out the latest Flutter tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching. I will see you in next video.